My name is Faith. I am an artist. I work in animation, comics, freelance illustration, and what you might know me from is my personal artwork, which is very fantasy, girls with swords. Basically, that's the vibe. And I have 3 sketchbooks to show you today. This is my actual sketchbook. This is where I plan everything that I'm going to do. I thumbnail out stuff. I have new ideas here. It's very ugly, but I'm being vulnerable and showing it to you today. This is my no thoughts, head empty sketchbook. This is what I do while I'm on the couch watching TV. It's ink. I post it on my Instagram because it looks nice. It's just stream of consciousness stuff. And then finally, I also keep travel sketchbooks, which are largely drawn either from photos I take or on the spot when I'm traveling. I am going to start with the pretty sketchbook to earn your trust. So this one, I largely use Pentel waterproof ink brush, and I also add like markers. I go back into this sketchbook quite a lot, and I just sort of draw what comes to me. I'm sitting on the couch frequently while I'm doing this, just sort of like watching TV. And this stuff ends up making its way into my finished work sometimes, but for the most part, it's just for fun. I do frequently reiterate a lot while I'm working in this sketchbook because I find a nugget of an idea that I like and I start chasing it. So this one was sort of Daphne-esque, a bit, like the myth where she turns into a tree rather than, date Apollo. And I just thought the idea of like face in tree was really cool. So I just kept drawing that for a bit. I also just like coming up with fun like costume stuff while I'm in this sketchbook. There's a lot of fairies in this one. I'm going to show some stuff later that is related to fairy stuff, but it was very much on my mind this whole year. So a lot of wings and also a lot of like monster girls. I don't know what was up with that.
Do you find yourself chasing like one specific thing for an entire sketchbook ever? Or is it like a few pages at a time?
I think it's a few pages at a time for me for the most part. I'll like come back to it when I'm like flipping through my sketchbook again. I'll just be like, oh, that, yeah. And then I'll like keep going back to it, but not for an entire sketchbook, I don't think.
Do the sketchbooks, there are different stages in the process kind of. Do they cross-pollinate a lot?
They cross-pollinate a bit for sure. Usually this sketchbook is not intended to inform my finished artwork. It's not like I'm trying to do nice compositions, but sometimes happy accidents happen where I'm just like, oh, this looks really nice. And I'll like toss it to my computer or whatever. Definitely subject matter wise, I start thinking about stuff here sometimes too, and then I bring it over to like my other sketchbook. This one ended up actually inspiring another finished series that I did, which was a foil print series of bird girls. I guess they're harpies, sirens, I don't know, but it was like seasonal. So this one was winter, and so then I turned it into a whole series where I did spring, summer, and fall as well. This one ended up being a watercolor that I don't think was very good.
False.
But I really like this specific drawing. It's based on the Judgment of Paris, the story where a golden apple falls and it's for the fairest. And so I chased that on both of these pages in different ways. And I end up going with the one on the right for the watercolor, which I'm going to tackle again at some point because I didn't do a good job the first time, but I love this composition. I also really like the composition of this one, so I might turn this into something. I love mermaids. And we're approaching the end of this one here. I really like this drawing. I think it's cute. And this is the last spread of my pretty sketchbook. So now we get to the part I'm dreading, which is showing you my real one. Just kidding. One thing is I always, for my real sketchbooks, work on gridded paper. One reason is that the grids help me literally compose shots like in an actual, like I just count the cubes and I'm like, all right, this is 11 by 17. But the other way that it helps is it makes me not fuss at all. I'm just like, okay, I'm down to business. I don't care if this looks good. It's just gonna get done. So these front pages that I'm showing now are from a tarot series that I actually just posted on my Instagram like last week. It's actually for a 3D Total book where each artist illustrated one tarot suit that's on pre-order now. And so I wanted to share it because I just think it came out really cool. So the compositions here more or less stayed the same when I moved to finishing it digitally. And then from there, you can see that I just started planning random things. There's a lot of little squares that you'll see, and they'll be hard to read. This one, I was planning a Birth of Venus piece. I do chase that later in the book, actually. because I wasn't happy with that composition. This is for a Sleeping Beauty piece that I haven't made yet, that I'd like to make at some point, where the prince or princess character, in my case, is fighting the big dragon. And here's like Aurora with the spindle here. I still haven't pursued this yet. This is for a Little Mermaid piece I haven't made yet, but I'm still exploring how I'd like to do that. This was for a VTuber I was thinking about making because I was thinking about streaming. So there's a few sketches of that. She was a vampire. I had like the BRB screen was like the lo-fi girl, but a vampire. I had a bunch of ideas. And then this is another piece from the Greek mythology series that I've been trying to do. I'm exploring the idea of doing like the labyrinth where the Minotaur is. So I wanted to do like Gothic walls and stuff instead of your traditional like stone walls, but I haven't quite figured this one out. So sometimes the actual drawing just gets pretty directly translated into a finished piece. I fairly recently did this one as a watercolor. I tried to capture as much from the original drawing as I possibly could. I still kind of like the original drawing better, but I really love how the watercolor came out. Overall, I like it a lot. I'm very happy. Some more drawings. I really like the cape on this guy. A lot of big hats in this sketchbook.
It's funny because it's bigger than a normal hat.
A lot of big hats. This was exploring the idea of Andromeda from the Greek myth, where she's chained to a rock at sea and waiting for a sea monster to eat her. Here's more Andromeda stuff and more labyrinth stuff, neither of which I ended up using.
Do you find yourself setting out to do any particular style each time?
Yeah, I think for the most part, I have a pretty consistent style, but I do have one style that's a bit cuter and more like animation friendly. And then I have my own style, which is a bit more what I like to do, but it's less practical for things like animating and stuff like that. So I have like two distinct styles and I just sort of flip through them depending on the situation. I was trying to plan an Icarus piece and I'm still sort of trying to plan that, but I'm not totally sure if I'm gonna do it. I don't know what this was about. I like it though. I do a lot of like random convention planning in here. So if you see like my name written out, it's because I was planning. It's not because I'm a narcissist. It's because I was planning out a banner for my table.
You're just like writing your crush's name, and it's you.
I'm just like, ooh. Oh, and then I was planning out doing like long, skinny Studio Ghibli film fan art. I liked the idea of having like very long panels where like one element was glowing because I feel like that's quite frequently seen in Ghibli films, and have them all like go together like a nice little series. Still thinking about it though. This one actually ended up being a finished illustration pretty directly. I started trying to design characters for fun that were themed around like light and fire. So the next few pages are like, you know, light bulb girl, phoenix guy. This guy was a tree burning from the inside kind of character. Just as like an exercise for myself for a project I haven't done. A little lantern guy. I like this one. It's very like Final Fantasy IX. Oh, and sometimes I do word puzzles in my game, in like my sketchbook. So very unfussy. Oh, I want to do a series of like seasonal pieces based on the idea of like a dragon hunter. So I have a few pages here where I'm exploring that. I really like the idea of tall grass and maybe the dragons going by in the background like that. And then like tracks in the snow for a winter scene. So all of these pages are exploring that a bit more. I like this one where it's going to be a bunch of flowers in the field as they're like checking the bark on a tree and being like, oh, a scratch, a dragon has been here. Sometimes I do just sort of note like costuming elements I really like. So I really like this sleeve. I don't really care about the rest of the drawing, but I wanted to remind myself that I like this sleeve.
Do you often pull from reference in any way?
I do, yeah. I pull from reference all the time. I love looking at like museum archives. The Met has a great one where you can just sort of filter through whatever category. I love seeing like beautiful puffy sleeves. This is not something I'm doing, but I was like, if I did a blind box, what would it look like? I had a graphic novel coming out, so I was brainstorming little like countdown illustrations. I did more of that in a different book. This page, I was thinking I would like to do an East of the Sun, West of the Moon series at some point. So this was where she went to the castle and saw like a big feast with the bear, if you're familiar with the story. Here's a little goofy guy. He's a werewolf. Here he is again. We can't get away from him. So this character is from a pitch for a children's book series that I'm working on right now with my agent. And one of the ideas I had was that the main characters meet a werewolf at some point, and the werewolf themselves is very nervous and not threatening at all. He's very sweaty, which I can relate to. I was brainstorming for a series of fawn illustrations that I haven't done yet. I was going to do them for Gen Con and I ran out of time, but maybe next year. Some mermaid sketches. One of my favorite pieces that I've done is of a woman holding like a hunting horn and blowing on it, and then there's a bunch of hounds that are coming. So I want to do a complementary piece where someone's blowing a horn, but it's a bunch of falcons and they're doing a similar, almost, I guess, Escher-esque pattern rather than them being literal. The other piece is very orange with a little bit of blue, so I think it would be the other way around.
I was curious, so you've used a couple different pens in there of different colors. Does that denote anything for your shorthand, or is it just splitting the composition?
It denotes when my pen has run out of ink, to be honest. Sometimes I do it just to help myself get like a sense of space and like read the thumbnail a little bit more cleanly. So for this one, I felt the need to like add a little bit of darkness at the back. But for the most part, it might denote value like this, but otherwise I just sort of use one pen until it's dead.
Do you have a preferred ballpoint pen or whatever this is that you use most often?
Oh yeah, I forget what it's called. They're pretty standard. They're like the
Crystal?
I think it probably is. It's Bic. Yeah, those are the ones I use. I really, really like how they draw. And then finally, I was brainstorming stuff for Sword Timber, which if you are aware of it, it's an annual sword drawing challenge in September. It's very casual. And this past year, I was thinking about doing like big landscape paintings, and I was like, who am I kidding? And I just did a couple of pieces this year. So this has been my thinking sketchbook. And then finally, I have my travel sketchbook. It's decorated with stickers I got in Japan. This one's my favorite. It's so cute. These are drawn both from life, and then some of them are drawn from photos later. These were all drawn from life. Basically, as soon as I got in Tokyo, I went to a cat cafe because we couldn't check in for our hotel yet. I hung out there for a little while and I just drew some cats. As a background designer for animation, I love drawing trees a lot, more than most people. So I do have a few drawings of trees here, different views that I saw while I was traveling. There's a bridge that was in Nikko, and I got a stamp at the train station, which I thought was fun. There's a lot of food drawings here as well. So here's some pancakes that I got. This is my Yokohama spread. We went to Yokohama, and then after the fact, I took some pictures and then I drew from the pictures. The Chinatown there was really beautiful, and we were supposed to go see the Gundam, like the big Gundam that walks, but we got there too late and it closed. Aww. This is from a park in Osaka. This was drawn from life, so I was standing there drawing. I really liked drawing from life while I'm traveling because I can physically recall a lot of what was going on, like while I'm there. Like I'll look at this drawing and be like, oh, I remember it was a really nice temperature, but I had to put on more sunscreen because it was a little too sunny that day. And oh, there were kids running around and they were like on their bikes or whatever. It's just very nice for me. This was also in Osaka. This is the Osaka Castle. I got a cup of coffee at a really beautiful place on the river, and I went to recommend it to a friend. And when I looked it up, it closed permanently. So this is more precious now. Here's the various meals spread. My favorite has to be the Minions churro that I had, followed by the Final Fantasy Cafe fries and drink that I got. And the fries were called Cheesy Potato Explosion of Despair. So I had to get it. It did not disappoint. This was another one where I really remember sensory-wise what was going on. It was getting a little dark and it was starting to get cold. My fingertips were a little cold while I was drawing this, but like it was very peaceful. It was a really nice night. The next few pages are the Fushimi Inari Shrine. As I was going up, if you're familiar, it's like a ton of stairs. It takes about like an hour and a half to get around. You get kind of sweaty. So I gave myself the excuse of like stopping to draw. And I was like, oh, it's for my sketchbook. So you can see how often I stopped here. This is also there. And then afterwards, I drew from my photos that I took all of these amazing statues that I saw while I was going up and down. I really like the frogs too. You guys might have heard about this place from Instagram, but I went to the Muscle Girl bar. I'm quite awkward. I didn't realize it was going to be very like one-on-one, where like you sit directly across from a very nice and very muscular woman. And so I asked at one point if she'd want to pose for me, and she did, and it was really fun. So I did some gesture drawings while I was there. There's some on the next page as well, because the manager came over and wanted to do some posing also. And this was a drawing just like in a park in Tokyo. And here's some here's my manager drawings. Also, as a side note, they gave you like a very, very large tankard, but I wasn't drinking at the time, so I got grapefruit juice. And I was just sitting with a huge tankard of grapefruit juice. This was drawn in Yayogi Park, as was this. The ginkgo trees were bright yellow, and it was just like in the distance, you could just see like a wall of yellow, and it was so beautiful. And then this was just at a coffee shop that was close by. And this is the last spread. I wanted to capture the fact that I traveled a lot on trains, so I just worked from a train station picture that I took, and I drew another small shrine that I saw when I was in Nikko.
How did your trip inspire what you want to draw in the future?
Oh, that's a really good question. I was very inspired by the colors, like even just seeing like that intense yellow in the far back there. I was trying to capture it, and I was like, it's so cool that these colors exist in nature, like that you can just see something really bright and wonderful. And then also from a background design standpoint, I love the architecture of cities in Japan. I am a complete nerd for like those micro tiles that you see in Japan but not in America. I love like the sort of like kinetic energy you get from exposed staircases on the sides of buildings, which they have a lot of in Japan. They have a lot in Los Angeles too, but it's a little bit different there.
Great, thank you. Thank you.
If you struggle filling up sketchbooks, then head over to proko.com/timer and give our timer tool a shot. You could set your session to be 1 minute per pose and knock out a page of warm-up gesture drawings, or set it for 20 minutes or longer to practice shading. Check it out at proko.com/timer.